The 9 power Titans on Attack on Titan are easily the strongest creatures in their verse, and it's obvious who the strongest is. But how exactly would they stack up against each other? Well, I'm going to break down each of their powers and rank them to answer that question, starting with the weakest, number 9, the Cart Titan. Pound for pound, the Cart Titan is easily the weakest of all 9 shifting Titans, but what it lacks in raw strength, it makes up for with mobility and agility, which doesn't count for much considering there's a stronger Titan that specializes in exactly that. But we'll get to that one in a bit. There is one thing the Cart Titan surpasses all the others in though, and that's durability, or rather endurance. This thing's not gonna survive any nukes anytime soon, but it is the Titan that requires the least amount of energy for upkeep. Because of this, the shifter that wields the cart has 2 specific advantages none of the others do. Number 1, its Titan form can be maintained for weeks at a time without the need to de-transform, making it perfect for long-term non-combat assignments like recon. Mainly though, it boils down to being a luggage carrier for its allies, hence the name. But because of this, the cart shifter is able to get the most experience in their Titan form and become most in tune with it. Through this, Peak is able to pull off maneuvers that require insane amounts of agility and body control, like when she rescued Zeke and Reiner in the battle for Shiganshina, or even when she was dropping Jaeger's bodies while the scouts tried to secure the Azuma Beetle airship. The cart's most useful ability, however, is number 2, going in and out of Titan form up to dozens of times in a row without tiring out. This enables its user to pull off plans that involve otherwise impossible feats like creating decoy corpses, something Peak actually did in the Battle of Heaven and Earth and Shiganshina, tricking Floch and the Jaegers with the skeleton of her discarded Titan body. And for a more direct combat application, this essentially gives her a massive number of extra lives, since she can just pop out of the Cart Titan and retransform anytime she's in danger, a strategy she abused the crap out of during the final showdown atop a certain Titan spine. Ultimately though, the cart's lack of offensive capabilities means it's the only Titan relegated to a purely support role. On the other hand, the number 8, Jaw Titan, is a purely chaotic beast of bloody carnage on the battlefield. Even in the hands of false Ymir, who had 0 Marleyan warrior training, the Jaw had enough raw agility and sharp ends to tear through tens of mindless Titans at Utgard Castle while protecting Historia and the others. Its true potential isn't unleashed until season 4, however, once Ymir is returned to Marley and her power passed on to Porco Galliard. In Porco's hands, the Jaw Titan is deadlier than ever, with an ultra-hardened faceplate, teeth, and claws that can break through almost anything. Even the 3rd strongest Titan's hardening didn't hold a candle to those teeth, and Eren made full use of that particular strength. Putting all that together with the tiny size of the jaw, it's an uncatchable menace that tears apart enemies. But if that's its true potential, the next user breaks its limits and takes it to a new level. After Falco obtains the jaw through a combination of drinking Zeke's spinal fluid and eating Porco, he inherits some minor traits of the Beast Titan as well. At first, this just gives his Jaw Titan some feathery limbs and makes his faceplate beak-shaped. Once he gains control over his transformation though, he's able to cause a mutation to the Jaw Titan, maximizing the beast's influence from Zeke's spine juice. With this, Falco's Jaw Titan gains the ability to fly, adding a whole new dimension to its applications. When it comes down to it though, that's because of Zeke's spinal fluid and not any inherent ability of the jaw itself, so this Titan's technically still weaker than the number 7 female Titan, which is one of the most versatile of the 9. Looking at it, you think this is just an average mindless Titan, but bigger, stronger, and smarter. And you'd be right, but that's not all it is. Thanks to its body being perfectly built for endurance and close quarters combat, the female Titan is absolutely lethal in a fight. Pair that with the shifter who actually knows what they're doing like Annie, and you've got a Titan-sized MMA pro that can beat the brakes off of even stronger Titans in itself. On its own, that makes the female Titan a formidable foe, but on top of being built for battle, it can mimic other Titans' power, albeit to a lesser degree. Specifically, Annie's female Titan could use hardening on any part of her body at will for both offense and defense. With her hardened fist, her melee threat level goes off the chart, and by hardening her nape, she can nullify the only guaranteed weak point all Titans have. On top of that, she also has the Titan Call power that's only been seen in 2 other Titans. With this, she can call on every mindless Titan that hears her roar, though there is a downside to that. Unlike the others with this power, the female Titan has no control over those Titans once they reach her, and they prioritize attacking the shifter themselves. Used as a distraction or an escape strategy though, it's still a handy power. While we only see these 2 mimic powers in the series, it's reasonable to assume that with enough experimentation, the female Titan could copy even more abilities, something that can also be said for its male counterpart, the number 6 Attack Titan. Now this might be a hot take, but the Attack Titan on its own isn't nearly as powerful as most people tend to claim. It's certainly impressive with all the advantages of the female, as well as its ability to mimic other powers by drinking those Titan spinal fluid, but as a standalone Titan, that's all it is. In fact, if it weren't for the theme of the show and the way this Titan is inherited, it'd be more fitting to just call it the male Titan. All of its more impressive feats in the show only happen because Eren's the one piloting it, and later on combining it with the powers of another shifter he eats. Even the single ability that's known as unique to the Attack Titan, Future Sight, isn't actually as strong as it sounds. Canonically, the only reason this ability is claimed as the Attack Titan is because Grisha Jaeger said so when he went to eliminate the Reese family. However, it's important to remember that he's being influenced by Eren in the future through the power of the past, which he can only access because of another Titan. The only other instance of the Attack Titan's Future Sight is when Eren Kruger suddenly says Armin and Mikasa's name to Grisha. Of the two possibilities there, one is that Eren Jaeger sent him this memory to guarantee himself meeting them in the future, and the other is that it was just a random memory from a future user. Both make one thing clear though: the Future Sight isn't a power that can be used at will, and as far as combat use goes, it has none whatsoever. And so the Attack Titan on its own, as used by Eren Kruger and Grisha Jaeger, is still in the bottom half of the 9, just under the number 5 Beast Titan. Similarly to Eren's Attack Titan, the Beast Titan we see in the main storyline is only as impressive as it is because of its shifter. See, the Beast Titan itself varies extremely from one shifter to the next because the animal it takes the form of is different every time. Potentially, it could take the form of a powerful beast like a giant cheetah or even a dinosaur, but this very rarely happens. In fact, Zeke's predecessor, Saber, had such a weak beast form that he was never even sent into battle, relegated to research instead. Zeke, however, has one thing none of the other beast shifters did: royal blood unbound by the Eldian King's bloodline. It's because of this blood that his Beast Titan was uniquely powerful, taking the form of a hulking, lanky King Kong. Though his massively chunky body and disproportionately long arms make him ill-equipped for close combat, he makes up for it in long-range capabilities. With Zeke's throwing technique, his Beast Titan surpasses most heavy artillery, shooting crush boulders faster and harder than cannonballs. It's this very technique that allowed the Beast Titan to obliterate the entirety of the Scout Regiment, as well as beat Reiner's Titan in an off-screen spar in episode 47. The perks of Zeke's royal blood doesn't end there though, because it also gave him the Titan Trigger Scream, an ability that lets him trigger the Titanification of Eldians who've drank his spinal fluid. This in particular made him an asset to Marley's war effort, allowing them to send dozens of bodies behind enemy lines and then pull the pin on their transformations. Again though, these are abilities unique to Zeke's Beast Titan and not the Titan itself, and while it's possible to get a strong beast form, it ultimately boils down to pure RNG, which is why it still ranks lower than the more reliable Titans like the number 4 Armored Titan. Simple, strong, and solid. Those 3 words sum up the Armored Titan completely. It's not the fastest or most agile Titan on the list, but the armor doesn't need to be either of those things. Coated in layers upon layers of hardened armor plates all over its body, the Armored Titan's innate weakness is non-existent, and it has a singular distinct purpose for both offense and defense. On the attacking side, it's a giant-sized living cannonball that just has to run at its target and bash through them, and defensively, it's a shield for its fellow Titans, protecting them from cannon fire and more. Reiner actually displays both these aspects of his Titan in the very beginning of Season 4, when he, Zeke, and Porco decimate an enemy base mere minutes after being deployed. And while Reiner as the Armored has lost in battle to both the Beast and Attack Titans, this once again comes down to the shifter skills and mindsets as opposed to the baseline abilities of the actual Titans. On paper, if you put the Armored side by side with the average Beast and Attack Titans, it still edges out a victory with its sheer resilience, since neither of them could normally have any way to break through its armor. And that exact strength is taken to a whole new level by the number 3 Warhammer Titan, which is easily the coolest and most technical of all 9 Titans. The baseline abilities of the Warhammer alone are absolutely busted. In essence, this thing's a Titan-sized 3D printer that can create anything its user can imagine almost instantly. Not only are these constructs ready to go at a moment's notice, they're also made of an upgraded version of hardened armor material that the female and Attack Titans can manifest. Oh, and did I mention its own body is coated in the same material? For all intents and purposes, the Warhammer is a direct upgrade to the Armored Titan, with a sleeker and less clunky coat of armor, and as many offensive options as its user can think of. Not only that, the Warhammer has one more advantage that none of the other Titans do. Its shifter doesn't even need to be on the battlefield. By using its power to construct a connecting tube of sorts, it can stash away its main body in a safe spot, allowing the shifter to pilot the Titan body like a drone without putting themselves in danger. And that's taken several leagues further when Eren gains the Warhammer and combines it with his third and most powerful Titan. In the final battle during the Rumbling, Eren's energy stores are virtually limitless, allowing him to construct an entire army of false Titans made completely of the hardened armor material. The only reason the Warhammer's not number 2 is because this wouldn't be possible successful on its own, though the fact that it's even possible is incredible. Speaking of the rumbling though, what Titan could possibly be more fitting for top 2 than the number 2, Colossal Titan? The largest, scariest, and most destructive of any Titan in the series, the Colossal might just be the most iconic too. After all, ever since its appearance in the very first episode, it's been synonymous with the show's identity. That aside though, there are several aspects to the Colossal Titan's powers beyond just its titanic size, pun intended. Yes, it's massive enough that just its existence is a threat beyond measure. After all, the rumbling, the greatest disaster to ever befall humanity and wipe out 80% of its population, is just an army of Colossals walking. But even more devastating than that in the moment is its transformation. When a shifter in possession of the Colossal Titan triggers their transformation, the Titan forms alongside an explosion comparable to a nuke. In the battle to reclaim Shiganshina, Bertold used this very ability to devastate what was left of the Scouts, taking one of Hanji's eyes and killing Moblin outright. And later on in Season 4, Armin demonstrates the full destructive potential of this power when he unleashes his Colossal without holding anything back at the port of Liberio. Now, of course, there are downsides to being a god of destruction, starting with the energy cost of such a massive form. Unlike something of the cart size, the Colossal can only transform a couple of times a day or so, and even that can really stretch the strain on the shifter, and that energy cost only climbs higher if it has to use its defensive abilities while transformed. What, you thought it was all in on offense? Nah, if anyone somehow manages to even get close to the Colossal's nape, it can shoot out a cloud of scorching steam from every muscle fiber on its body, burning and blowing away anyone in its vicinity. That steam is created by eating away at those very muscles though, so the longer the Colossal has to defend, the weaker and closer to de-transforming it gets. As damning as those downsides are though, they only come into play a single time in this Titan's history, when Armin makes the plan to beat Bertold in the battle for Shiganshina. No other opposing force has ever worked out or utilized these weaknesses, which solidifies the Colossal Titan as the strongest of its kin, second only to the number 1, Founding Titan. Now, before we get into the scaling of it, it's important to remember there are actually 2 versions of the Founding Titan. The original one, wielded by Ymir Fritz herself, was the first Titan in human history, and it possessed the abilities of all 9 great Titans in one. The second version is the Founding Titan that was inherited by the royal bloodline and its descendants, which possessed the founder abilities alone. For obvious reasons, Ymir's original Founding Titan is the strongest of all with no argument to be had against it, but even the inherited version of it without the power of the other 8 Titans is quite simply unbeatable for one big reason. The Founding Titan has the power to control every living being with Eldian blood on a cellular level. To explain that though, we've got to talk about the paths. The paths are an extra dimensional plane of existence that can only be accessed by descendants of Ymir, i.e. Eldians. Here, all with Eldian blood are connected at a single nexus point that's often been compared in the fandom to the mythological world tree, Yggdrasil, from which all things originate. And here in the paths, alone since her physical death, is the spirit of Ymir, capable of manipulating all who've inherited her flesh and blood throughout the connection. Whoever possesses the Founding Titan possesses the ability to command Ymir within the paths, giving them full creative control over the whole race. With this, they can change the physiology of the Eldians to make them immune to certain diseases, alter their memories, instantly sterilize, and much more. But it doesn't end at the human Eldians alone, because the Founder can also command and control Titans, including the other shifters themselves. One of the 2 greatest examples of this is the 145th King Karl Fritz's act of transforming millions of Eldians into Colossal Titans and commanding them to stand in place on Paradis Island to form the walls. The second example is the undoing of this very command when Eren Yeager unlocked the Founder's full power. By being free of Fritz's vow denouncing war and making contact with Zeke's royal blood, he took full control of the Founder and undid the King's work, unleashing the millions of Colossals in the walls upon the world in what is known as the Rumbling. Without the combined efforts of the remaining true scouts, the Marleyan warriors, Zeke himself, and the spirits of the past shifters within the past, no force in the world could have stopped the Rumbling. This alone cements the Founder as the strongest Titan there is. If you'd like to see videos on Attack on Titan, be sure to drop a comment.